Welcome back to Think Tech Talks here on a given Monday. Today is the 1 to 2 block, and that's the SOEST show. SOEST standing for the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology. We're going to talk about coastal sustainability today. Coastal sustainability in Hawaii, but I suppose the lessons we learn in Hawaii are useful elsewhere, with Gordon Grau, who is professor and the director of the Sea Grant College program at SOEST, and also Dolan Eversole, who is, I guess, first an extension agent, but much more. He's the regional coordinator for NOAA, the NOAA Coastal Storm Program.
That's right.
Okay, I'll say that over and over. By the end of the show, I'll really know that pretty well. So, can you tell us, Gordon, exactly what the Sea Grant program is and what it does?
Sure. Sea Grant program is a partnership between the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and America's universities. There are 32 Sea Grant programs around the country. We were one of the first 5 at the University of Hawaii.
In what year?
In 1968 is when it was approved, and it was certainly Senator Inoue had a lot to do with that, and also President Johnson was involved in the process that led up to our getting a program. The Sea Grant program nationally is based on the Land Grant program, which was started during the Lincoln administration. In those days, the federal government gave grants of land to states to start universities that would benefit people. That was one of the distinguishing characteristics, and Sea Grant is set up to benefit people.
Does that mean the common good?
The common good.
The public in general, rather than the specific graduates or the specific research, components.
Exactly, the public good. The thing that distinguishes land grant and Sea Grant universities is that they engage in research, education, and outreach. We call it extension. And that is to bring the best possible information to people, the community at large, decision makers, people in government service, so that they can make the best possible decisions. One of the guiding principles
whether
is
they like it or not.
Whether they like it or not, exactly. So, but one of the guiding principles is that we do not advocate. We will engage everyone to try to give them the information basis on which they can make the best possible decisions. So, for example, if we were in the health business, which we are to a certain degree, but it's not our central focus, we might say that cigarette smoking has been shown to cause lung cancer, cardiovascular disease, but we would not advocate banning smoking in public places. That would be that part of it would be for other organizations.
But you would educate the public on the positions that have been taken, on the research.
That's right.
That has been done.
Exactly. So, and our program has been changing over the last 10 to 15 years in a rather dramatic way from where it had been before. In previous years, we had been focused almost exclusively on fisheries, on aquaculture, and on specific environmental issues. We're still involved in those efforts, but we are now engaged in much broader set of issues that we're dealing with. And it's not just simply science. Natural science is certainly a major part of what we do, but we also involve social science, law, design in the form of architecture, engineering, and planning. We are involved in economics and so forth, and that's because the problems we face in the coastal area, and everything in Hawaii is coastal, all of those problems are multifaceted, and they require a multidisciplinary approach if we're going to have success.
Wow, that's really a mouthful. How do you sleep at night?
Well, it's a fun job. I like to say it's the best job in the university, so I feel very lucky to be working with Sea Grant. One of the things that conclusions we came to a number of years ago is that most of the problems we face on both sides of the shoreline come from what we're doing on land. If we weren't doing things we shouldn't be doing on land, the marine environment would be just fine, get along just fine without us. And so if we're going to be involved in something more than just cleaning up the mess we're creating in the first place, we have to get what we're doing on land right. And so that's how we came to collaborate with the School of Architecture and with a lot of other partners. So, we've organized ourselves into centers of excellence. The first one we formed was in partnership with the School of Architecture, which is the Center for Smart Building and Community Design.
So the centers of excellence are where this cross-disciplinary concept lives.
Exactly.
So if you wanted to, collaborate with other parts of the university or other universities, you would do it through the Center of Excellence.
That's right. And our university, like many others, we call them universities, which means one from many. We get the versity or diversity part of the university right, but the bringing it together as a focused force is something that all universities are challenged with. And so the Centers of Excellence actually have been a great vehicle for doing that. And so the Center for Smart Building and Community Design involves architecture, engineering, community planning, a wide range of different disciplines. And it focuses on bringing the latest concepts and latest technology together to reduce the environmental impact of our buildings, of our communities, how we design our communities and so forth, and to make them safe, vibrant places to live, socially and economically inclusive, and work within the capacity of their habitats and ecosystems. So that's really, you could say that about our entire program. That's the guiding light for our program. I'd ask Dolan to talk about the Center for Sustainable Coastal Tourism, because he's been very much involved in
And
that.
that's just another Center for Excellence.
Yes, it is.
Where these multidisciplinary, discussions take place.
Exactly. Not just discussions, though. Actually, we have a variety of programs which we can get into, things that we've done that have changed the character of development, the way people do business, and so forth. And so we'll be happy to talk about
Yeah, I
that.
think and the backdrop for this is something that Tom Apple told us more than once, and that is when he was in the University of Delaware, his last posting. His contribution was to have the university help the local community, and he was an activist in that way.
Yes.
And he did that as a high priority. And when he came here, that's also his high priority. So what you're doing is right in line with that, to take the work of the university and help the community with it,
That's
where
right.
the community might not otherwise have that benefit.
And that's actually what distinguishes a land grant, sea grant, space grant university from a university like Harvard, great university, but they don't have that mandate as part of their charter, whereas we do.
Yeah, they could do it, but you must do it.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Given the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, well, it's a great opportunity. So
It is.
tell us about coastal management and the Center of Excellence on that.
Sure. Well, maybe just a quick introduction so everybody out there knows who I am. As you mentioned, I'm Dolan Eversole. I am a coastal geologist, formerly trained at the University of Hawaii. And I've been serving as an extension agent for 10 years now with the University of Hawaii, with Gordon. And as an extension agent, I guess I'm an example of a network that we have through our Sea Grant program. And part of my role is to do education and outreach, or extension as we call it. And that is essentially, as Gordon briefly described, taking research products that are generated through the university and getting them out into the community.
This is really important. You're not the only place that has extension agents, though. I mean, I know that the School of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources and all that, they have extension agents.
Yes.
That's right.
And,
And we collaborate with them. And,
really,
yes.
another cross-disciplinary.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember was it the 4-H club?
Yes.
Extension agents, and the guys who go out in the fields and make sure that people are getting the message, and that there's a value being delivered from the experts to the people who need to know about the expertise.
That's right.
So it's an important role. And was Was this the case a long time ago, or is the notion of an extension agent, more recent?
Well, Gordon might be better equipped to answer that question.
It really dates back to the 19th century, and as I said, the land grant system of universities was formulated during the Lincoln administration.
So it was always part of the concept of a land grant university?
Yes, it was, yes. And so you still have some universities that are named agriculture and mechanical, like Texas A&M. The A&M stands for agriculture and mechanical. Florida A&M and so forth. Mechanical, we now refer to as engineering. So it was a combination of agriculture technology and engineering technology that not only supported the development of American agriculture, which is widely acknowledged to be the most advanced in the world, but also to improve the quality of life of people living in rural communities. And so,
in many ways, that's what we have here.
yes.
I mean, I'm only half joking about that.
Yeah. Well, we we do have rural communities. We tend to forget that in Honolulu, and in our case, we apply that same model to people living in coastal communities. And Hawaii, everywhere is coastal in Hawaii. Definition of coastal is usually given as 50 to 100 miles from the coast, and the farthest you can get from the coast in Hawaii is 29 miles on the island of Hawaii. So
let's break it down. Dolan, so you're an extension agent, and reading my notes, and a regional coordinator for the NOAA Coastal Storm Program. That sounds like it's directly related to coastal sustainability, coastal management. So you're the perfect person to be in the center of excellence. No?
Well, I'd like to think so. I don't know if perfect is the right word, but yeah, I'm happy to serve in that capacity. And as you mentioned, in addition to my extension agent role, where I work primarily within the state of Hawaii, I serve also and primarily right now, as the regional coordinator for this NOAA Coastal Storms Program, which our Sea Grant program is hosting. And this NOAA program is regional, so I'm based here in Hawaii, but I work all over the Pacific Islands, U.S. affiliated Pacific Islands. So the territories of Guam and American Samoa, the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas, the Marshall Islands, and Micronesia. So I'm engaged with government officials in those regions and working with them on developing ways to improve community resilience. So sustainability and resilience are very much integrated, and we're paying a lot of attention to how people perceive that message, and not just telling them what they could, should, or ought to do, but finding ways to help them actually do it, and providing the tools and services they need to make decisions. And that could be from government officials and needing things like maps of sea level rise, for example, all the way to working with individual communities on developing hazard mitigation plans or climate adaptation plans, or improving their ability to be more sustainable by growing their own food, for example. This is something we hear a lot about in Hawaii, but this happens to be a global problem where we're not very sustainable in how we live and grow food. So working in these small Pacific islands that are sometimes very small atolls, those problems are compounded and really come to the surface when you start talking about sustainability and resilience. It really comes down to food and water, which is something we take for granted, I think, here in a developed country. So I serve as a coordinator for NOAA activities to assist these communities. There's obviously a very strong connection to our University of Hawaii, and if somebody needs scientific information, I can find the people that maybe have the ability to do that, whether it's mapping or research information, climatic, weather type data, and then maybe find either the funding for it directly through NOAA, or find the partnerships to bring the funding and the resources needed to complete a project. You might be wondering, well, what kind of projects are those? Just as a quick example, through our Coastal Storms program, we recently had a small grants, an award, a federal award, that was administered by our Sea Grant program here at the University of Hawaii. And we are awarding 7 projects throughout the region, 3 of which are here in Hawaii. And they range from projects anything from more of a research-oriented project looking at weather radar applications in HELO and the ability to forecast weather systems and, more importantly, even the waves that are produced by these storms in a high-frequency radar array, to community training for hazard awareness in the Marshall Islands, and developing a homeowner's handbook for natural hazards in the Marshall Islands as well, which is a follow-on to a handbook that we've developed here in Hawaii, which is now, I think, grown into homeowners handbooks around the nation. I think there's 8 that have been developed in coastal states, started here, and there's 8 more under development. So it's neat to see some of the products that we've developed here for Hawaii expanding throughout the nation. So we are, through our Coastal Storms program, working around the Pacific, but our primary focus for our Sea Grant program is here in Hawaii. That's the bulk of our effort is spent here, and mentioned earlier that I'm one of a network of extension agents that work for the University of Hawaii. Specifically within our network of extension, we have 6 or 7 of us that work specifically on coastal hazards, and that's obviously intimately tied into sustainability and resilience.
What's a coastal hazard?
Good question. So coastal hazards, they could be a suite of hazards, but those that we typically work with are
Hazards are never sweet.
not sweet as in tasting sweet, but yes.
Pardon my sense of humor. It's incorrigible. We're going to have to take a break right in the middle of that. We'll come back and we'll talk about a suite of hazards.
No problem.
Good. Thank you.
Gordon Grau here, the director of the Sea Grant College program at SOWEST, and Dolan Eversole, agent, extension agent, a regional coordinator for NOAA, for the NOAA Coastal Storm Program. We're going to talk more about those after this break. This is Think Tech Talks, the SOWEST show here on Monday. I'm Jay Fidell. We'll be right back after this break.
We want to thank our underwriters.
Hawaiian Electric Company and its affiliates Maui Electric on Maui and Hawaii Electric Light Company on Hawaii Island are deeply committed to the communities they serve.
Galen Ho is a senior executive of BAE Systems, a global defense, security, and aerospace company.
The High Tech Development Corporation, the state's leading technology agency, attached to the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism.
Castle and Cook Hawaii, with a time-honored legacy that spans more than 160 years and revolves around its mission of investing in Hawaii, creating communities, and providing for the needs of our state.
Hawaii Gas, formerly the Gas Company, a proponent of the Liquefied Natural Gas Initiative, helping Hawaii achieve its transition to clean energy and a better energy future.
Collateral Analytics, a Hawaii-based tech company empowering the real estate industry with greater and faster access to the tools and data they need to make better informed property investment decisions.
I'm Nicole Hori. Thanks so much for joining us on Think Tech.
I'm Maria Kashem. See you next time.
Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm your host, Jay Fidell, here on Think Tech Talks, the SOWEST show on Monday, 1 to 2 p.m. with Gordon Grau and Dolan Eversole of the Sea Grant College program at SOWEST, talking about coastal sustainability in Hawaii. And we were hearing from Dolan about exactly what's going on in the coordination of the Coastal Storm Program.
Yeah, that's right. So I think we were talking about the suite of hazards that we typically work on here, and those, just in a quick summary, are typically include things like hurricanes, tsunamis, flooding, coastal inundation, and of course something that we've heard a lot about just recently is coastal erosion, and of course sea level rise and climatic induced hazards like sea level pushing erosion rates. It's something we pay a lot of attention to.
How do you sleep at night? All these things are happening simultaneously.
Yeah, well, they do. Luckily, we only usually get one hazard at a time. But
good work for that.
Fortunate in that respect. But so I mentioned we have a network of extension agents. They work around the state, and we pay a lot of attention to the latest research that's coming out related to coastal hazards and climate change. And we try to ensure
that's being done at the mothership. Am I right? That research you're talking about?
Yeah, research.
Or is that global?
Global research, but particularly research that's being done at the University of Hawaii. but we do follow international research and the latest and greatest reports on climate change and things like that. And we, in part, we interpret that information and make sure that communities that might need to know that have an understanding and know where to get the information. And a typical example of our extension agents is they're affiliated and actually physically located in the county planning departments.
Oh, really? So they're embedded then?
They're embedded in the planning departments themselves, and they serve as, and also the DLNR, the Department of Land and Natural Resources, so they serve as in-house technical advisors. While they're not employed directly by those agencies, they're university faculty, but they serve as advisors as needed, and reviewing applications for permits for seawalls and coastal development, things like that.
Giving scientific input on it.
We bring the science to the
expertise.
decision making. That's really the idea.
It's interesting. On the one hand, as you said, Gordon, this is, in a way, it's unprecedented that the university should have this kind of extension. But it's a great thing, and it's a great, in the words of Tom Apple, it's a great
Exactly.
contribution to the community. But the other thing that strikes me is that you're right there at the operating edge of it. In other words, you can, if you're embedded in, say, a county agency, you can help motivate them to actually take action.
That's right.
It's their action, but you're there in the decision process, and in the previous model, I would say this wasn't happening. Now there's a really good connection, and it's much more seamless this way, isn't it?
That's true, and we're very fortunate. I don't think community in Hawaii is aware of the great stature that the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology has. It's ranked in the top 3 or 4 in the nation in several important metrics, including publications in peer-refereed journals and grants. It's right up at the top, just behind Scripps Institution of Oceanography in California. And this is a tremendous asset. It's obviously, being a state surrounded by ocean, it's absolutely essential that we have excellence in that area. But the Sea Grant College program is a unit of the school. We are, part of the University of HAWAIIAN Manoa, but we are system-wide in terms of our approach. So we have faculty in every county. We have at least three faculty on the island of Hawaii. We have 2 faculty on the island of Maui. We have 3 or I think 4 now faculty on Kauai. We have collaborations with UH Hilo, we have collaborations with Maui College, and we're entering into a new relationship with Kauai Community College.
All this is coordinated in the center itself, in the Sea Grant
Yes, it
College
is.
program. So
Yes.
you see what's happening.
We have 25 faculty, and then we have also staff. For example, we operate the education program at Hanoma Bay. We've run an education program since the 1970s, and we've been under contract from the city and county since the 1990s. So we have in addition to about 25 faculty, we have staff who are also involved in outreach and education. We have a faculty member who is seconded, UH Manoa faculty member who is seconded to College of the Marshall Islands, where they teach and conduct outreach. Same thing with American Samoa Community College. We have a faculty member who's seconded there. So we have faculty around the Pacific. The important thing is that not only do they have considerable expertise themselves, but they connect back to not just the School of Ocean and Earth Science and Technology, but College of Social Science, College of Architecture, College of Engineering, a wide range of partners. I mentioned CTAR, the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources. So we can bring together all of those resources and connect them to the needs of the
But
community.
whatever your question is, you can get feedback.
We
on
can
it.
get some of the best experts in the world to address those.
So this
issues.
is the show of sevens. Did you say that there were 7 extension agents around the state?
Well, just within our coastal hazards.
7.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's 1 or 2 that are kind of, in and out.
Roughly
25
faculty altogether.
Yeah.
involved in outreach and extension.
Okay. And 7, you get 7 projects that you're building right now? 7. I heard 7.
Well, 7 in
7.
in
Then
coastal
you have
hazards.
7 new faculty coming in.
We do.
So it's a show of 7.
But we
lucky
also
7.
have about 15 research projects that we support, and about close to 20 graduate students whose education we support. We also support the education of a number of undergraduates as well, and they are also integrated into our program. So the graduate students are actually learning how to do outreach extension work as they're doing the research for their degrees. So it's a very powerful system.
Well, it strikes me, when I started practicing law, they always said that of all the state agencies, this Department of Transportation was the most important because they're an island state. And they had a lot of power being on the waterfront,
Right.
and controlling all that. And in a funny way, that also applies to SOWEST. Because we are an island state, and our science is more interested in should be more interested in our surroundings, and you guys are the ones who look at that.
Right.
But tell me about the 7 faculty you want to hire. How does that work?
Sure. Well, we started this system. We didn't really finish talking about the Centers of Excellence model, and we have 3 of them now. Smart Building and Community Design, Sustainable Coastal Tourism, and Marine Science Education. And one that we're, as I mentioned, was kind of in the oven in development called, and we're tentatively calling it Coastal Processes and Hazard Resiliency. And as we mentioned, that involves collaboration throughout the university, throughout the Manoa campuses specifically. And a couple of years ago, the then Chancellor, Virginia Hinshaw, formed a competition for coastal sustainability. And there were, I think, about a dozen proposals. The one from Sea Grant was the one that was selected. And I am told that the fact that we had developed collaborations throughout the campus was a very powerful motivation for the selection of our proposal. That allowed us to recruit 7 new faculty, and you're going to have to help me, Dolan, here. We have one in architecture, one in engineering, one in economics, one in urban and regional planning, one in collaboration with TropAg, with the natural resources.
Architecture.
Did I mention architecture?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay. And
It's the same kind of diversity that you're talking about
Exactly.
in general. So this is a kind of a mirror image reflection of that diversity.
exactly, and these are joint appointments. So they have appointments with Sea Grant and appointments with the department of their discipline. And the reason why we did it that way is that we want to have people who have to meet the highest standards of their discipline.
This will
Working on
help
it.
you.
Yes,
This will help you with the centers of excellence. It will help you with a multidisciplinary approach to
Exactly.
things. It'll make university a mecca of expertise in coastal sustainability around the Pacific.
exactly.
This is really fabulous. And this is a big step forward, isn't it?
It is. It greatly increases our capacity. It also firms up these relationships with other units across the campus and allows us to move forward in a coordinated, concerted
So
way.
I have to study to get the job.
Well,
Okay, how is the process going? How do you select a faculty member, who can serve in these, dual appointments?
Well, there are a couple of elements that are really important. First of all, you have to write a job description and a job ad that will attract the kind of people you want. And then on the search committee, we form a search committee. These are national and international searches.
So that the whole world is your
That's right.
opportunity here.
The interesting thing is that of these 7 people, they're the best. They were the first choice in every situation. But one of the interesting things is that 3 of them are Native Hawaiian ancestry. But they were the scholars that were the very best in their field. So we feel really lucky to have been able to recruit.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So Oceana Francis is an engineer. She grew up here, spent her high school years though in Oregon, worked her way through college at the University of Nebraska in mathematics, physics, and then got a degree in engineering. She's a professional engineer, and then got a PhD in oceanography at the University of Alaska. So she's coming back home.
So that's one. Have you picked all of them?
Yes, we have.
Oh, they're already set.
They're already
when
here.
When are they going to start? What, January 1?
They've already started.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
You're already cooking on
Yeah.
this.
Some of them came last year and some of them came this year. So Rosie Aligato is a assistant professor of oceanography. Craig Nelson is also an assistant professor of oceanography. We have Michael Roberts, who's an economics professor.
You're going to send them all down to this table, right?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Yes, we will. I'll tell you, each of them is really a very interesting person.
How are you funding them?
These are through state general funds. So we're very fortunate. That's why having our proposal awarded by the chancellor was such an important thing, because it has increased our, we have the same budget from the federal government, core budget from NOAA, that we did in 1980. Almost the exact same dollar amount.
You need more than that by definition.
So the fraction, of our total budget that comprises has decreased dramatically in recent years.
Sure.
We are fundamentally a partnership program. Everyone in our program writes grant proposals that get funded, like Dolan does, for example.
So some are funded by grants, rather than
Partly
general
by
fund
grants and
process.
partly by general funds, and it's most of our faculty have a little piece from here and a little piece from there. Some of it state funds, some of it federal funds, and some of it private funds.
That's the way universities work now.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
going to take a short break.
Sure.
That's Gordon Grau. He's a director of the Sea Grant College program at SOWEST. And Dolan Eversole, he's extension, I can't read my handwriting, extension agent and regional coordinator for the NOAA Coastal Storm Program. We're here at Think Tech Talks on the SOWEST show talking about coastal sustainability in Hawaii and elsewhere, I suppose. Yes. We'll be right back after this short break.
Thank you.
Aloha, I'm Jay Fidell for Think Tech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaiian Foreign Trade Zone, number 9, has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBED, the Hawaii Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program. It does so to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Jay Fidell of Think Tech. Mahalo. We're back. We're live. We're here with Gordon Grau and Dolan Eversole of the Sea Grant College program in SOWEST, and we're talking about coastal sustainability in Hawaii. And Dolan, can you give us a handle on exactly what some of these functions are? For example, the coastal, what is it called? The
Center of Excellence.
The Sustainable Coastal Tourism
Sure.
as a function of the program. What does that mean? What does it do?
No problem. As Gordon mentioned earlier, we have 3 centers of excellence that we've dedicated through our Sea Grant program. And these are interdisciplinary efforts to bring together various faculty through the university and sometimes outside of the university on a particular topic. So Gordon mentioned the Smart Building Community Design. That's looking at the built environment, energy, architecture, sustainability.
Really more important as time goes on.
That's right, and looking at how we design, build, and live in our communities. One of those that did want to talk about a little bit is sustainable coastal tourism, and this is a center that looks to develop partnerships with our tourism industry here in Hawaii, and for a variety of reasons, of one of which our tourism industry is not only a very important economic sector for us, but they also consume a lot of our resources. So we're very interested in assisting the visitor industry in becoming more efficient, more sustainable, And one example of that, the initiative through our Center for Sustainable Coastal Tourism, is a project looking at the feasibility of using saltwater air conditioning in Waikiki. You might be familiar with this technology, which in its simplest form is
seawater air conditioning.
Seawater air conditioning, taking deep, cold ocean water and pumping it through a recirculation plant that then cools buildings. There's 2 projects proposed, one of which is on its way here in downtown.
Yes.
And so we've been involved with looking at the feasibility of doing one for Waikiki.
Yes.
One of the big benefits of using that technology in Waikiki is that the hotels are air conditioned 24/7, as opposed to the downtown district, which is more of a 9 to 5 scenario. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity to improve sustainability and energy use. And one of the other things that Gordon brings up a lot that I wasn't aware of until I got involved with this is the typical air conditioning chiller unit evaporates water to cool down and release heat. And in doing that, it also evaporates a tremendous amount of fresh water. This is potable water. They don't use salt water. They don't use even gray water. This is drinkable water that's evaporated in the atmosphere. And it's thought to be one of the #1 energy uses and #1 water use in hotels.
Interesting.
So
There's got to be a better way, huh?
we're looking at ways to alternative energy systems to cool the buildings down.
You know, seawater air conditioning, you may not know, was actually invented in a project that was funded by the University of Hawaii Sea Grant College program. Back in 1982, I was a beginning assistant professor, and I was working on a project at Keohole, at the Natural Energy Laboratory there. And it was to see whether we could raise salmon in that deep ocean, cold ocean water. We had a very limited budget. The electricity bill was going to be too high for us to pay, so we had to think of something else.
You had a deep sea water pipe from OTEC.
That's right.
You brought that pipe up and used deep sea water for the air conditioning.
My partner,
and it's still there today.
My partner actually bought a truck radiator. We put a zinc electrode on it so that the radiator wouldn't corrode. We pumped the cold ocean water through the truck radiator. We went to Long's Drugs, bought a box fan, and blew air over the. And that was the invention of seawater air conditioning. Of course,
That's wonderful.
While it was invented in Hawaii, of course, it's been implemented much more broadly around the world.
Scandinavia, and the guy who is trying to establish the program downtown, you know, in Hawaii Seawater, Hawaii Seawater Air Conditioning, actually had a success in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Where there is a large installation in Minneapolis.
Yeah, in Toronto they use district cooling using that. The interesting thing is that, and I take no credit for other than being this guy's partner, his name was Arlo Fast, he's a very clever guy, and it shows that necessity is the mother of invention. We couldn't do the project and pay the electricity bill, so we had to figure out some way to do that. But if you get smart people doing things, you can very frequently unpredicted benefits come from it. So this was a project that was focused on salmon, but the legacy of that program, 30 more
Isn't that great
years,
the way that works?
is the invention of seawater air conditioning.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you guys are involved in it because it's been hung up a little bit.
Yeah.
The one downtown's been going on, must be 8 or 9 years, maybe more, for one reason or another, and it does require a multidisciplinary approach. You got government, you got social issues, business issues, lots of things stand in the way of a sort of, we call it a common good kind of project like that.
Well, you know, I've recently been appointed Interim Director of the Water Resources Research Center, and our water resources are finite and much more limited than most people actually understand. And we have to start using water much more intelligently than we have been. So, for example, half of the water that's used at the UH Manoa campus is used for evaporation in cooling towers to cool down the campus.
There's got to be a better way.
We can't use potable water for that purpose anymore.
And it'll be more the case as we go forward.
That's right. Same thing in Waikiki. Lots and lots of potable water.
You guys thinking about, gee, I'm blocking, where you make fresh water out of seawater?
Yeah, well, reverse osmosis, but we think that actually it may, in fact, we're funding a project on this now, that it might be much more energy efficient to condense the water out of the air, in the same way you condense water out of the air in your glass of iced tea on a warm, humid day, is to run deep ocean water through pipes, heat exchangers, and condense the water out that way.
Using the cold of the pipes
to condense the water out of the atmosphere.
There was a project in Nelha exactly like that. In order to irrigate plants, cold water coming from that deep sea well, and then it would condense the water out of the air, and with that condensed water, it would water the plants.
Exactly. The originator of that was John Craven.
Yes.
A very smart guy, a very creative thinker. He was working with a number of other people that included Jack Davidson, who was our former director. And Jack Davidson and John Craven actually were central in our university getting a Sea Grant College program. So, things come around and go around, and
you just got to be alert to them and find it where it lies.
Right.
But one thing I would like to, we have 9 or 10 minutes left, would like to talk about is sea level change and the storms. I wrote a piece about this not too long ago for the Star Advertiser. And one of my points, I found, and I should have confirmed with you guys, was that we were going to have bad storms. It's got to happen. And I guess what you're doing as regional coordinator for the Coastal Storm Program is you're worrying about the storms as they may hit Hawaii and how we can be resilient about that and what we can do, if anything, about it. I worry about that. You worry about that?
I try not to, but yes, it can be overwhelming if you start to, like you said, if you look at all the hazards together, it can be overwhelming. But that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because we do have a number of initiatives that we're working on to help answer questions regarding climate change and hazards, coastal hazards. And in particular, one I wanted to point out was a coastal storms, a NOAA-funded project that we're doing. We're just wrapping it up now through the university. And this involves 3 principal investigators at the university. And what we're doing is, it's somewhat innovative in that we're looking at sea level rise. And many people have seen maps of Waikiki, what it looks like in the future, and Honolulu. But we're doing a little twist to this. So what we've done is we've looked at the impacts of sea level rise, which are becoming more well understood. And we looked at the impact of raising sea level on our inundation zones. So these include the tsunami inundation zone and our hurricane inundation zone. And a lot of people are familiar with the evacuation maps that you find in the phone book. You can find them online. So what we did was we reran the computer model that generated those maps with sea level raised 3 feet, which is a rough approximate estimate by the year 2100. A lot of the projections are suggesting maybe up to 1 meter of sea level rise. So these maps, as you might expect, are pretty dramatic, and it's a little bit different than taking the maps and then raising them 3 feet. We raised it 3 feet and then ran the computer model, which is a different approach. And the maps for Honolulu are very dramatic. They obviously increase this inundation zone for both tsunami and hurricane. And by the way, everybody always asks me, what's worse, tsunami or hurricane? Turns out the hurricane inundation zone extends further inland, but the tsunami inundation zone has faster water flow.
And more damage.
And probably more damage. Yeah. Well, if you take out the wind damage.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, but with this project in particular is looking to answer questions about what is our existing, and I should also point out that this is for Honolulu only. It's really the urban core of Honolulu, Waikiki to the airport. And what it does is it may give us a glimpse into what our future inundation zone might look like, and it actually maps it out. And we've also gone on to identify what critical infrastructure is located in this area and what kind of economic assets.
Community infrastructure, or
well, things
public
like
and private.
Public and private, and the economic value of some of these facilities like hospitals and police, fire, school, those kind of things. And what's the economic impact of them being in operation?
You know, when you originally talked about the multidisciplinary approach, that's what came to my mind, because if you have certain infrastructure is damaged or destroyed, that has a huge secondary effect in business and social. It round and round in the economy, and it could really destroy the state effectively if it happens in that area you described. So you need all kinds of expertise to figure out the full thrust of the implications. But having done that, or doing it, figuring out the implications, what do you do with that? I know you wouldn't advocate, but what would you do with it? Because it's extremely important, because the likelihood increases. I wake up and I look out and see a sunny day. I say, well, that's one day closer to a bad storm.
Yeah. Well, it's an important point, because as humans, we're resistant to change. There's a comfort zone of staying where we are, whether we're talking about coastal hazards, whether we're talking about the way we generate electricity, the way which the patterns of development in our community and so forth. But what one always has to do is measure the impacts of business as usual, and then compare that with the impacts of change. So we were talking about seawater air conditioning. We have to make sure, and we're doing the research now to make sure that this seawater air conditioning has the minimum impact that it can have. But everything that human beings do has an impact. And business as usual with air conditioning means burning lots of fossil fuel to make electricity. It means using lots of water in cooling towers and so forth. The environmental impacts of business as usual are huge. The environmental impacts of not preparing for sea level rise and not preparing for storms layered on top of sea level rise is very, very dangerous. So one of the things that we hope is that the information we bring to the table tells people that, staying where we are is not an acceptable paradigm. It costs way too much to air condition. The danger of not getting ready for a major storm or a tsunami.
Here's the problem. Yeah. Here's the problem. You guys are, an exquisite think tank. You're the best we got about this. Nobody better. And for that matter, in the Pacific Ocean, nobody better. You can come up with the most wonderful ideas and plans and possibilities and solutions and all that, but how do you get the operators to implement those, to take them forward, to do it?
Well, we can talk a little bit about that, but if you have us back, if you bring us back, we can talk in much greater detail.
Okay.
I can tell you in terms of development in the Ewa Plain, and we could spend an hour just talking about development in the Ewa Plain. About 10 years ago, we collaborated with the Environmental Protection Agency, their Office of Sustainable Community Development. We brought in economists, planners, developers from other parts of the country, and basically said the pattern of development is going on in this area is going to lead to urban sprawl of the typical pattern. It's going to make our traffic jams worse than they already are.
This is the kind of analysis we need.
Yeah, and the pattern of development. I know Ho'opili is a controversial development, but they implemented a lot of the elements that we in the EPA brought to them. One might argue, should it be where it is, but in terms of the way in which it's developing is state of the art in terms of minimal environmental impact. And so that's one of the ways in which we've been able to change. Now, initially, I think some of the developers were a little resistant, but what we were able to show is that they could do right by the environment and make more money at the same time.
Are you satisfied with the level of acceptance?
Yes.
Okay.
And
we only have a minute left, and I thought Dolan could take the role of the summarizer,
sure,
and closer.
Okay.
So what happened here today, Dolan? And what message do you think we should want to leave with the public?
Yeah, good. Thanks for the opportunity. Well, hopefully we've left everyone here with a introduction to our Sea Grant program, who we are, what we do, a university-based program. We're involved with extension and outreach. We communicate directly with kind of at the grassroots level sometimes, the communities that are affected by decisions. So we try to help them become better informed, everything from sustainability community resilience that can involve a lot of different things. Coastal hazards is a major focus for our program as well. And then, of course, not as a separate unit, but all intertwined within all that is climate change. And that's something that we are getting more and more heavily involved with in understanding the science and conducting the outreach and extension for that. I look forward to maybe returning back and talking with you more on some of the projects that we're working on.
Yes.
And like Gordon said, we could go on for an hour on any given topic, but just as a broad spectrum, I think people got hopefully a sense for what we're up to, and can find out more information from our website. We have a tremendous amount of information available to people online, all of our publications and guidance documents.
What's the website name?
We are probably easiest just to Google Sea Grant Hawaii, University of Hawaii Sea Grant. I can tell you the address, but it's pretty long.
That's okay. Well, my closing is that, if it's not obvious now, it will be soon that you guys are going to save our bacon. You are very, very important. Going forward, these risks will reveal themselves, and what did you call them? The hazards.
Coastal hazards.
A suite of hazards will reveal themselves, and you guys are going to make us understand and protect ourselves. It's very valuable. It's a great contribution by the university. Gordon Grau, Director and Professor of the Sea Grant College Program. Dolan Eversole, Extension Agent and Regional Coordinator for the NOAA Coastal Storm Program. Here on Think Tech Talks, the SOAS show on Monday. We're talking coastal sustainability in Hawaii and much more. And it's clear we're going to have to come back and continue the discussion.
Look forward to it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks.